Welcome to the Daily News on September 23rd, 2021. Today we start in Brussels in Belgium. The European Union has postponed preparations for trade and technology talks with the United States in protest against the US and UK submarines deal with Australia. Agreed discussions about the meeting on September 29th in Pittsburgh were initially suspended, said two EU diplomats in Brussels on Tuesday. EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen had previously described the submarine deal as unacceptable. The EU member France was actually supposed to deliver submarines to Australia. Minister of State for Europe Michael Roth also said that they understand France's disappointment. We all have to come on the same table. Here you have to regain trust that has been lost, and that will of course not be easy, he added. And he said, it has been shown time and again that a united demeanor on the part of the EU is of paramount importance. The foreign policy spokesman for the Greens, Omid Nuripur, called on the federal government in Germany to mediate in the submarine dispute. The order of the day must now be that Germany, as one of the no smaller nations in Europe, now stands up and tries to call for reason and mediate, he told the TV broadcaster Phoenix. On Thursday, Australia, Great Britain and the USA announced an Indo-Pacific Security Pact shortly after the EU adopted new Indo-Pacific guidelines. Among other things, the pact provides for Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines using technology from the two partners. This meant that the delivery of conventional submarines with a volume of $40 billion or 56 billion euros agreed with the French shipping company Naval in 2016 became obsolete. France called back ambassadors from Canberra and Washington, annoyed by the cancellation. In addition, France had threatened to block a free trade agreement between the EU and Australia. The French shipyard initially won the contract for Australia against German competition. And now let's go to New York in the United States. There was the UN meeting, if you remember. Brazilian Health Minister Marcelo Queiroga tested positive for the coronavirus during a business trip with President Jair Bolsonaro to New York. Queiroga wrote on Twitter on Tuesday evening that he will remain in quarantine in the United States. According to Brazilian media reports, he is the second member of the Brazilian delegation in New York to have a positive result of a corona test. According to the presidency's press office, which the news portal G1 referred to, the tests were negative for other members. The right-wing populist Bolsonaro played down the coronavirus from the start and repeatedly speaks out against the use of masks and other containment measures. At the UN, the honor system applies. Anyone entering the United Nations building in New York confirms that they have not tested positive in the 10 days before. Queiroga tweeted photos in the past 2 days with Bolsonaro, his wife Michelle, and representatives of investment funds, among others. And now let's go to Strasbourg in France. The European Court of Human Rights holds Russia responsible for the 2006 murder of ex-agent Alexander Litvinenko in London. The two men who poisoned Litvinenko with the radioactive polonium-210 were apparently acting on behalf or under the control of the Russian authorities, the Strasbourg court announced on Tuesday. Since Russia refuses to share internal investigative documents that could show the opposite, the assassination of Litvinenko is attributed to Russia. Litvinenko had worked for the Russian secret services until the end of the 1990s. Litvinenko and his family fled to the UK after he made public that he was investigating an attempt to kill a Russian businessman. In 2006, he was poisoned there by two Russians and died a little bit later in the hospital. British authorities saw the responsibilities with Russia. Moscow has always refused to be involved in the case in the past. The court now found that the two men who administered the poison to Litvinenko had no personal reason to kill him. In addition, they would not have come across the rare radiation poison on their own. Also because Russia did not provide the courts with the necessary documents for the investigation. It violated the right to life enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights, as the court ruled. Litvinenko's widow, who had gone to court in Strasbourg, is said to have received 100,000 euros in compensation from Russia. Russia rejected the decision. The results of the investigation are not yet available. Therefore, the statements of the court are unfounded, said once again Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov to the Interfax agency. And he said, the European Court of Human Rights is unlikely to have the powers and technological capabilities to obtain information on this matter. The European Human Rights, based in Strasbourg in France, is part of the Council of Europe. The bodies that are independent of the European Union work together to protect human rights in the 47 member states, including Russia. The judgments of the Court of Justice are binding. And now let's go to Washington in the USA. Images of the use of mounted US border police against Haitian refugees have caused excitement and indignation in the USA. US President Joe Biden's spokeswoman Jen Psaki said on Monday that the footage was awful to watch. Although she does not know the exact background, she also does not know in which context such a procedure could be appropriate. I don't think anyone who saw these footage would consider it acceptable or appropriate, said Psaki. Homeland Security Minister Alejandro Mayorkas announced an investigation during a visit to the border area. We'll look into the facts, he said. If necessary, there will be consequences. Photos by photographer Paul Ratje, who works for the AFP news agency, and video recordings show how mounted border guards in the state of Texas on the border with Mexico act against refugees from Haiti. For example, a policeman grabs a man by his t-shirt while on horseback. In other pictures, it looks as if police officers are threateningly swinging their long reins. Internet users felt reminded of the times when police officers on horseback or prison guards in the USA used whips to crack down on black people. Ratje said the border police tried to block the way for the refugees as they crossed the border river Rio Grande. And now one more time we have to go back to New York in the USA. Presumably because of his missing corona vaccination, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro ate a pizza on the sidewalk on the sidelines of the UN General Debate in New York. Luxury dinner in New York, wrote a member of the Brazilian delegation on Monday on the online service Twitter, under a photo of Bolsonaro with a slice of pizza outdoors. The restaurants in the US metropolis are only allowed to serve guests indoors who have received at least one corona vaccination dose. Bolsonaro, who's heavily criticized for dealing with the corona pandemic in Brazil, himself claims that he has not yet received a corona vaccination. He wanted to be the last Brazilian to be vaccinated. According to Brazilian media reports, he had to enter his hotel in New York through the back door on Sunday to avoid demonstrators who shouted, "Bolsonaro out," in front of the building. Because of the compulsory vaccination in many indoors public spaces, a debate about mandatory vaccination certificates for participation in the UN General Debate has flared up. An undertaking that is doomed to failure in view of the special diplomatic position of the UN headquarters. But remember the part about someone from Brazil I talked earlier in this video. And now let's go to Beijing. In the fight against global warming, China will no longer build coal-fired power plants abroad, according to head of state Xi Jinping. He said, China will step up its support for other developing countries in the development of green and low-carbon energies. Xi said that on Tuesday at the general debate at the UN General Assembly in New York. China will also not build any new coal-fired power plants abroad. When it comes to economic development, attention must be paid to harmony between people and nature, said Xi in his video address. China is currently pushing infrastructure and other construction projects in numerous countries as part of its new Silk Road project and is also open to coal power. According to a group of non-governmental organizations, the state-owned Bank of China is on its own the world's largest financier of coal project and has pumped around $35 billion into the sector since the Paris Agreement in 2015. China, the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, is also investing heavily in domestic coal power in order to secure economic growth. Last year, coal-fired power plants with a total capacity of 38.4 gigawatts were connected to the grid. According to a report by the Carbon Tracker expert group in June, the country is also planning 368 new power plants with a capacity of 187 gigawatts. The Chinese government has announced that it will reduce CO2 emissions before 2030. The country should be CO2 neutral by 2060, but I'm curious how they want to do that. The Paris Climate Protection Agreement, passed at the end of 2015, aims to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees compared to the pre-industrial era and is considered a milestone in the fight against the climate crisis. A recently published UN report sees the Earth on the dangerous path of warming by 2.7 degrees without a radical change in direction. The next climate conference, COP26, will take place from October 31st to November 12th in Glasgow in Scotland. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.